Hello, everyone. This is James Templeton with the Templeton Wellness Foundation. It's great to be with you again, and I'm very excited today because we've got a guest that is a cancer survivor for right about 10 years almost, and she's quite something. She has quite a story, and she did it her way, and she did it all natural. She's doing great. She's helping others now. She's a nutritionist, and she's doing some great work with people. And she happens to be in my area, and I didn't know that until about 10 minutes ago. I'm looking there, and I see Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I went, oh my gosh, that's we're in Coeur d'Alene area. So anyway, that was interesting to see that, and but we're gonna have a great interview, I know. But first of all, uh, I have a book. Most of you know about my book, but some of you don't. Uh, this is about my story, how I overcame fourth stage melanoma, and it's going to be 40 years this year. And I have quite a story, and I talk about how I got up and walked out of the hospital at 2 in the morning because the things that the conventional medicine just basically wasn't working for me. And I knew I had to do something else. And it's a very interesting story how things can happen. And this was way back, and we didn't know what we know today. There's a lot more you can do today that I knew about, but still a lot of the things that I did are very important still. They're the key, the kind of the foundational things that you'll learn about. And that's what we're all about here, is educating you. We want you to make the best decision for yourself, because most of you are going through cancer or cancer diagnosis, or you've got a close family member or friend, and you want to educate yourself and learn more and be inspired. And we want to give you hope, because, I always like to say, look, if I can get well, and many of the other people I've interviewed, check out my other interviews of survivor interviews. If they can get well, uh, then you can too. Why can't you? You got to roll up your sleeves. You got to educate yourself and do the work and make changes in your life. I can tell you that. You have to do that, and you have to be willing to do that, and willing to, uh, want to, in your heart and soul, really get well. And anyway, you're going to be inspired today for sure in our interview. But also check out Templeton List, templetonlist.com. That's our restaurant guide here at Templeton Wellness. And we've got almost 10,000 restaurants out there now. And I know you're going to be very inspired by checking it out, because you're going to find organic, farm to table restaurants that are the healthiest out there. And I'm sure there's other ones out there that we've missed. So please let us know if there's one in your area that meets our criteria. And we'll sure, check them out and vet them and make sure and put them on the list. But, just like when you have cancer, I always like to tell people, always, eat at home as much as possible, because you know exactly what you're putting in your body, and you're probably cooking for yourself or your wife or your husband or someone cooking for you. And make sure that you are in full control of that, because a good, healthy nutrition is so important. And we're going to talk about that today, I know. But check out our restaurant guide. I know you'll be glad you did. This is part of our nonprofit foundation here. It's all for myself. I just want to give back. I want to help people find the answers. I want you to get excited about, even though it seems like it's a bad issue, and sometimes it's a serious issue in most cases, but you can do much better. You'll do really well, but you got to understand what causes in the first place. What causes a cancer diagnosis? It's not just something that happens. There's a lot more to it than that. So anyway, check out my book, check out our other interviews, check out the expert interviews. I've interviewed some of the top docs and experts out there that excel in natural cancer therapies around the world. So I know that you're going to enjoy it. Take a couple of days, educate yourself. You're going to learn so much, and you're going to be an expert almost in a few days. So I think that's important when you have to make that tough decision. Don't think you got to make it in an hour or two. You know, think about it. Educate yourself. You know, this cancer didn't happen in 2 or 3 days. It happens over 10, 12 years or more, you know, where it's detectable cancer. And so you got a little time, but don't mess around with it, but educate yourself. And I think you'll be glad you did. But anyway, today we have a great guest, Katrina Foe, and she is a functional nutritionist, but she has a cancer story, and it sounds like a really good one, and I'm excited to hear about it. And she's doing a lot of great work now to help others also. So she has been inspired to make a difference in others' lives, and she probably would agree with me that, you know, at the beginning it's probably scary, but you down the road you kind of feel like, hey, maybe this is what I'm really meant to do. Maybe this is my calling. Maybe this happened to me for a reason, a lot larger reason than just me getting cancer and being sick and depressed and feeling sorry for myself and how come this happened to me? I'm a good person, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, Katrina, it's nice to have you today. It's great to see you, and I'm so excited about your success and congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, I would
Yeah,
totally agree with you on all of that very much.
good. And you know, tell us a little bit about your cancer story and tell us how this came to be, and you know what a little bit about what you were doing, and a little bit about yourself, I guess, and how you discovered this, and what kind of cancer it was, and you know, and all that. People love to hear this, and because you know they're getting similar situations and dealing with similar situations.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, I am a mom first and foremost, and when I found my cancer, I was nursing my fifth baby.
Wow.
We had moved up to Idaho very recently when this happened, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. We had moved up there specifically because we wanted to have some land so we could grow gardens and have meat animals specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was the person that was already doing all the weird things. We were making soap and lotions and everything we could to have a clean lifestyle. I was healthy. I was a Pilates instructor. I mean, I still am, but I did not feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
I felt great. And that I stress that because I think I hear that a lot from my clients that this is came out of nowhere. I was already the healthy person in my friend group. So I was 37 years old and I was nursing baby number 5. And I didn't think much of it. I got a plug duct and did what I usually do to get it to clear. And what I found is that when it cleared, I still had a golf ball sized lump in my breast,
Mm.
which again, at that point, I still didn't think much of it because, in nursing breast tissue
Yeah.
shifts and
Yeah.
changes. I didn't think I had any family history. And that's when it came out. My mom got very worried about me, and she starts telling me how my grandma had a double mastectomy. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I've never heard this story. Well, she didn't know if she had cancer, but she had had a double mastectomy, and why else would you have that? So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I had that in my history and it had never been talked about.
Yeah.
Um, so I started diving in because I was really kind of irritated with what was, how could this happen? So let me back up. I had already had some food as medicine, very big, radical things happening in our family to see the power of food. And so I had already had some friends that had gone through cancer that it was horrifying to watch. So for me, I knew that if I had cancer, I didn't want what they were selling.
Uh-huh.
That's not to say it's not a time and a place, and that's not the journey for everyone. So um, I also knew that there were testings out there, blood biopsies that you could do to diagnose cancer. And so I did that instead of the oncologist.
What kind of test was it? You remember?
So they take out your blood and they can measure the circulating tumor cells
Mm-hmm.
and they can see what kinds of cells they are to see where the tissue came from and everything. So it's a little different. You can't tell like the HER2 and all this kind of stuff from it. But for me, I had already seen like, oh, mammograms are radiation and the biopsies can spread the cancer, and it didn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since I had heard so much about the fear and the pressure that an oncologist puts in the whole process.
Yes.
So I got them back, and I have to tell you, I just kind of took it to shut my mom up. And I was flabbergasted that it came back with cancer. And so I started digging in because at this point I was a little angry and frustrated and confused. And I set my bias aside and I said, clearly something I'm doing is not working.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in hindsight, that was probably the most important thing I did. So I looked at everything, all of it again. And I'd already done a lot of research. I'm like, okay, let's look at the vegan, let's look at the raw, let's look at the juicing, let's look at you know, all the stuff. And I remember back then, my sister, God bless her, she sent me a thing about a keto diet. And I was like, that's dangerous. That's scary. You're cutting out whole food groups. This is too much. And so I kind of went the other way. And I'm like, okay, everyone's talking about juicing. And I went down to a Gerson clinic in Mexico.
Uh-huh.
And I had a lot of questions going down there. I wasn't totally sold on it. I'd read the books, I understood their concepts, but I had a lot of questions. And I'm asking, why are you putting me on thyroid medication if you haven't tested my thyroid? Why are we not allowed to eat any salt and no fat? And these are important things. And what's the logic and science
Yeah.
behind it? And they just kept kind of poo-pooing me along.
Uh,
And by the third day, I had the director of the facility come in and sat me down. And he said, Katrina, a lot of my staff has been saying you're asking a lot of questions. I think you just need to trust in the process.
uh-huh.
And that just set me off. Um, I, I can't trust in a process if I don't understand any of it. And how would I trust someone if they can't explain what they're doing?
Yeah,
Uh,
and you got to believe in what you're doing, and you got to feel like I'm on the right track. I feel this in my heart and soul.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, why would I trust someone if they can't explain it? I
Yeah.
mean, we're not talking about a wart here. We're talking about cancer. It's kind of a big deal.
Hmm. Yeah.
And again, because I hadn't done the more extensive testing, I didn't know how aggressive it was. I'd had some lymph node involvement, which was a whole separate, thing. So again, I didn't have all the details like I would have if I had done all that.
Yeah.
But I was incredibly engorged because I had just weaned like within a week and they were feeding me oatmeal, which is a galactagogue and stimulates your breast milk. And I'm got no baby around me. And
Sure.
it just got bad. And they asked
Hmm.
me to leave the facility because I wasn't trusting in the process.
Yeah, and they felt like, if you weren't going to trust in it, you wouldn't have the results that they were looking for.
Yeah.
And it's just better, probably felt like it's better for you to find something that you really believed in.
I don't know at that moment if it did. When I left there, I felt like I was free falling. I thought, okay, I made my choice. I did my research. There we go. And it felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me.
Uh-huh.
Looking back in hindsight, it was the best thing that could have happened
Yeah.
for so many different reasons. But I came home, I did a juice cleanse because I didn't really know what else to do, while I was doing more research. And a friend of mine connected me with a functional practitioner, Dr. Veronique Desaulnier, who runs Breast Cancer Conquer. I think you have her interview on here,
I
actually.
did. I interviewed her.
So I was a client of hers, and it made me feel so much better knowing that she had had cancer and she had done it natural herself.
Yes.
Um, anyway, so we started running a whole bunch of tests. I had never run any of these tests before. I didn't even know it was a thing. And we ran stool and urine and genetics and blood and all these things. And there was so much that came back that I had no symptoms for, no
Yeah.
idea were off, like really big things. And so
Yeah.
it
It's
helped me
amazing.
feel
It's amazing the toxicity that we're all carrying around. And the only way you're going to really determine this is through testing.
so much, so much. But I mean, like I was super insulin resistant. I didn't feel bad. I felt great.
Hmm.
My thyroid was super sluggish. My vitamin D levels were in the toilet. I was very estrogen dominant. I had toxic levels of mold, like you're referring to, and I had some other
Hmm.
chemicals and things going on. There was a huge amount of stress. I had just moved from a different state. I had no friends, no support system. I had a toxic relationship. There was a lot of things going on.
Emotions, that's a big
Oh,
part.
yeah, big time. So I started diving into all those and having the concrete testing of like, this is the marker. Oops, it's changing. Yay, it's going the right direction. Like to be able to see that helped me feel like I had some control.
Hmm.
I wasn't just shooting blindly.
Right.
Um, so this is where it gets weird. So I feel like I'm dialing everything in. I then get invited to go to a retreat, a women's retreat, just generic. And I was like, they're going to eat bad food. They're going to be eating, canola oil stuff. I'm like, that can't be good. And I just felt very strongly in my heart that I needed to go. So I did. And the entire time I was at the retreat, it was just at all the breakouts, it was just very strong on my heart that I needed to go and be with my husband in the biblical sense on Sunday night. And I
Hmm.
wrestled with this. I'm like, I have cancer. I just did a hormone retest. I know what time of the month that is. Like, people are already pissed at me that I'm doing this natural. Like, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, you're not going down to your oncologist and doing what he says and
Right. So, long story short, I did, and I got pregnant with baby number 6.
oh.
So, a lot of the things that I was doing, I couldn't do. And a lot of them I could do, but it did some magnificent things. I get very sick when I'm pregnant. Crazy. I know I keep having babies. Um, but I it's I know I was in ketosis because I don't eat very much.
Hmm.
And I got a very low, very, very low iron, severe anemia, which again, I think these things, now that I know what I know, we're playing into this. But the cool thing was a month before the baby was due, the lump was 100% gone. Like I couldn't palpate anything. I'm not a large woman where you could, feel it, you miss
That's
it.
that's unbelievable. Yeah.
Right. And this is the cool thing. So I nursed him for a year, great delivery at home. Came back around and said, Dr. V, okay, I want to understand kind of more what happened. I want to learn more, like what books do I need to read? What I need to finish the detox work that we were doing that I had to stop.
Hmm.
And she said, read this book, Fat for Fuel by Mercola. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. And she's like, Katrina, read it. And so I did. And before I was done, I was doing keto. And it was pretty eye-opening. It made so much sense. The science was there. And what I noticed was like 2 or 3 months in, I started to feel better.
Yeah.
So I have bipolar and I do not take medication because it doesn't help. And I white knuckle it. And I was feeling better, but I didn't want to say anything. And I started to do research on it and realized like, um, well, let me back up. So it was actually my daughter that brought it up to me. Her dad was talking about being joyful in all circumstances. And giving some examples of neighbors that had lost their house in a fire. And she looks at me and him and she goes, like mom's cancer. And we're both like, what? And he goes, what do you mean, honey? And she's like, well, if mom hadn't had cancer, she wouldn't have tried keto. And now she's happy.
Oh.
She saw it before I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I've dug into this research now and seen that keto can in fact put bipolar in remission and can help with cancer and put it in remission, and usually not by itself, but it's a huge factor.
It is.
Um, and people weren't talking about that back then. It was just starting to get popular and discussed. And so I didn't know this. And I'm so grateful because, like I said, going to the Mexico clinic, that would have been the worst thing for me. It would have encouraged all the insulin resistance and, not gotten the therapeutic ketones that can
Mm-hmm.
shrink tumors and such. So, yeah.
How long did it take you? You said you felt like you were in ketosis. How long did it take you to start feeling that feeling?
Oh, mine, it probably took a good 8, 9 weeks.
And you
Um,
felt that, yeah, you felt like you were,
oh my God.
your body starts to almost like burn, starting to,
Yeah.
metabolize the fats and starting to use that for fuel instead of the sugar.
Yeah, it was very dramatic. So I started with a fat fast, which probably wasn't the nicest, gentlest way to do it. I just remember like the third day laying there in bed, just being like, my nose itches. That's too much work to itch my nose. Like it was profound. My body's like, I'm not burning this fat stuff. But as I started to, keep with it, I started to notice my energy came back and my brain opened up like I have never had it be so clear. And it kind of makes me angry when I hear people on blogs be like, oh, yeah, after 2 or 3 days. I'm like, well, maybe for some people, but if you have really broken metabolism like I did, and I had some genetics that my PPAR alpha and such that makes it harder to get in ketosis metabolically, it's a little tricky. And then you throw on the toxins like the mold that were really blocking all my hormones. It can be a difficult thing. So, is it possible? Absolutely. Is it
Yeah,
worth it? Absolutely.
yeah,
But it may not be like what the internet says.
yeah. It's very interesting because I've interviewed a lot of people and especially doctors that work with a lot of uh, patients, and they a lot of them use a keto type diet because it I mean, I'm not saying it works for everyone. There's all kinds of diets. I was on a diet that was very high in fiber and, organic cruciferous vegetables and all that, but I didn't know about all this stuff, and then, I mean, I kind of the first thing I ever heard was kind of like an Atkins diet, back, and I started eating a little bit different, but, it was a fat flush diet, but it's similar to that because it limits the carbohydrates and the sugar and all that you intake, and I felt great after that, even better because it's more rounded and it gives you more freedom. You just got to avoid certain things. But a lot of these doctors talk about how successful it's been working for them, and they're doing the functional medicine, they're type testing
Yep.
before and after,
That's
the
what I do.
the cancer marker test. They're doing, probably similar tests to what you have done, and maybe some more now than you did then. But there's a lot of different ones that will let you know how much uh, cancer is probably more likely in your system, and then you can see the before and after, and we start to believe that you seeing is believing.
Yeah,
So
very much.
and the keto diet, you hear about it all the time. You hear about, carnivore, keto, paleo. People go, well, what's the difference? But the key though is that you're basically uh, helping to starve the cancer because the cancer is feeding off of the glucose and the sugar and that is
Yeah.
produced. So then,
Yeah, for me. Yeah, I alluded to my food is medicine story prior. We did a very strict GAPS with the intro and everything for 2 years, which was fabulous. It
Mm-hmm.
helped our guts a lot, but it did not help my blood sugar at all. And that's
Yeah.
what most people would consider, a low carb diet. It doesn't have any restrictions on the macros or like how much fat are you eating. And I was completely able with the squash and the fruit and the beans to maintain my insulin resistance, no problem.
Yeah.
So, you can have really great carbohydrates in your diet, super clean, everything, and it doesn't mean you're getting into ketosis. Which, like you said, not only are we getting the blood sugar down, but we're also getting the ketones up. And those ketones have been shown in the research to reduce tumor size and help adjust and block all these different pathways for cancer. I mean, they're miraculous. They're amazing. And then you also have the benefit of not producing so many free radicals in the Krebs cycle when you're metabolizing, which this is just like multitasking, and it's free.
Yeah.
So I really I use that with all my clients and along with the functional testing now. I just I think my journey in hindsight is kind of ironic because I had been given the keys from my sister of the keto diet and I was like, no. And it was like God's like, okay, you're not going to do that. Okay, let's just get you pregnant and put you in ketosis, and we'll do this a different way. Um, because the ketones were, I think, really key for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been aware of this for quite some time, and nearly every doctor that I interview that gets the best results with some type of a similar diet, at least that limits your carbohydrates
Yeah,
it gets the sugar down low, and then there's an issue about glutamines too, that cancer can feed off of glutamines. Whether it does or not, it's what it's believed that
some
it
can. Yeah,
can. And glutamine is hard to get rid of because it's in a lot of
yeah.
foods and everything. But there's reducers, glutamine reducers that people can get, and there's exercise helps.
Mhm.
Some of the anti-inflammatory products like curcumin and a lot of those help a lot. So there's so much you can do, and so so you started to feel much better. How long did it take before the tumor was totally gone?
The tumor is totally gone in a little less than a year.
Wow, that's great.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's
I
you.
was,
That sounds about right because most of the time it takes a few months to really get on the right track, and you start to see things starting to happen with
yeah.
something, and it does. I mean, people ask me all the time, how long did it take till you knew you were kind of cancer free? And I said probably a year or two at the most. But you just kind of then I started doing these kind of tests. And I didn't at the beginning. I didn't know anything about this. I was doing something they
Mhm.
didn't believe in anything but diet. So diet and lifestyle. But
Yeah. Well, most of these tests are pretty new.
hmm
And even just from the time when I had cancer till now as a practitioner, like they've changed. They have new ones keep coming out every year or two. It's amazing. The technology is moving really fast, which is
yeah.
exciting. Hard to keep up with, but it's exciting.
Yeah. So you followed this diet, and also you did some other things too along with it.
Yeah, I did a lot of other things. So I was working on all those areas that I mentioned. So, I mean, the diet was working on the metabolic component, but I did the some DIM to get my estrogens down. I got my progesterone up with the Vitex. It worked great for me, supporting my thyroid function. I did a huge protocol getting rid of the mold and, of course, getting the house remediated and such, which
Mhm.
I've then had a subsequent re-exposure and had to do that part again, which is so fun.
Mold's a tough one sometimes.
You know what? Here's the thing. I test all my clients for mold, and people are not talking about this enough because I've only had two clients, and these are all cancer clients that didn't have toxic levels of mold.
Hmm.
I mean, so it kind of blows my mind. Like mold is a known carcinogen. We do our thing with whatever, whether it's standard care or natural stuff, but if the person is still sitting in the mold, is it, I mean, of course it's going to come
Oh,
back. It's a big deal.
I was exposed to mold. We were living in a rental house when we were building the house, and I just one day I was a runner, and I'd go out and run. One day I just started wheezing, and I'm like, "What's going on?" I couldn't breathe,
Mm,
and I couldn't run after that. I couldn't even walk very far without getting out of breath. And I was like, "What's going on?" I thought I had cancer in my lungs or something. I didn't know. I was freaking out because I had the background of having cancer. And of course, it wasn't that, but it was mold. I mean, this house had a leak in the wall and near the shower that I took a shower in every day. And we had all this mold coming out. And of course, when I
yeah.
mentioned it to the owner, they about ran us out of there, and they wanted us out of there. They didn't want to hear anything about it, and I was like, look, I'll pay for it, to get somebody in here to take care of this. And they didn't even want that. They wanted to get us out of there, and
Mm,
I mean, we didn't stay in there long. I couldn't, but it took me almost 2 years to get to feeling normal again. And I was trying all kinds of things, and there was a couple of things that helped me more than anything else, but it just took time, and over time I felt normal again, and I haven't had any more issues like that at all. But
yeah.
it was a scary thing, the mold was.
Yeah, the
And
mold's a big
I mean,
deal.
there's a lot of other things you get, but most people get loaded down with heavy metal toxicity,
That's a
and
big one for a lot of people.
that's a real big one, and
Yeah.
that affects a lot of things. But don't you think cancer's just overabundance of of issues, from
Yeah.
heavy metals to what I like to think is intestinal parasites,
Mhm.
to candida, fungal, mold,
Yeah, so
just
there's
a
10
lot of
areas.
things, and the immune system gets to where it's goes to sleep on you, can't
Right.
do its job anymore. So
Yeah.
plus all the stress in life and the emotional stuff, it's just you're loaded down, and we all have cancer cells in our body, but our immune system's strong enough to take care of it on a daily
Mhm.
basis to keep it down to a certain level, and then after you get all this, it starts, you know, going to sleep on us.
Yeah, I know. I absolutely agree. That's how I explain it to my clients a lot. There's 10 areas, parasites and the microbiome and everything be one, the toxins to be one, these kinds of things that you're mentioning. That most of them we can do objective testing now.
Uh-huh.
The only one we can't is that mental emotional trauma. So a year prior to a diagnosis, I usually see something that is emotionally traumatic for the client, not 100% of the time, but with these 10 areas, there's usually 7 or 8 that are going to create that perfect storm, like you said, to overwhelm the immune system. Because, the immune system, we've got our natural killer cells that are going after those rogue cancer cells. We've got angiogenesis, you know, different uh, angiogenesis
Mm-hmm. The
mechanisms. We've
blood
got the
supply to
proteolytic.
the cancer cells.
Yeah, yeah. We've got the autophagy processes. We've got the proteolytic enzymes. We've got all sorts of different ways that those cancer cells should be in check that
Mm-hmm.
then go sideways and are not. So it's a matter of trying to get as many of those on our view screen so that we can address them and prioritize and be strategic as possible so we're not missing anything.
It's like peeling the layer of the onion back, right? Each
Yeah.
layer, take the toxicity out and start off and kind of from the ground up, just start getting to the root.
Yeah, yeah. And the quicker we can do that, the quicker we can slow things down.
Mm-hmm.
And this process can be done alongside standard of care. It actually, being in a state of ketosis is going to make the chemo and radiation more effective. And it's going to prevent cachexia from
Mm-hmm.
setting in, which is what usually is the actual killer of most clients. So it's a big deal to get into ketosis. It's not just trying to be healthy, it's actually therapeutic.
Yes, it is. And I mean, there's so much. I mean, even sleep is important because a lot
Yeah,
of people don't sleep enough, and you've got to
that's one of the areas.
regenerate, at night, and
Yeah,
go to bed at, ideally your best sleep is probably if you get to bed by 10. I think
absolutely.
was it like 10 to 1 or something is
Hmm.
your best, generative sleep, regenerative sleep because to just to kind of rebuild your system at night, and give it some energy.
Yeah, that's when the healing and the detox happens. And if people are missing out on sleep, again, that's the free stuff. But, we can look at the adrenal hormones and see what's going
Hmm.
on, and that's going to be fed into with those stressors and everything.
The energy, yeah.
But that cortisol, melatonin should yin and yang and go back and forth. And a lot of times nowadays, for a lot of people, it's not, and people don't take it seriously.
Yeah. Well, you need a good diet or nutrition, and you've got to support yourself, I believe, and like you say, with some of the supplements and nutrition and supplementation, because that helps to support yourself, give you the energy you need for healing,
Yeah.
detoxify, and there's the detoxification process is very important because even like I know I think where you did coffee enemas and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. The deficiencies is a big deal. And I tell everyone, make sure you don't skip that you're digesting your food well, you have enough stomach acid and
Mm-hmm.
everything. Because people are so focused on parasites, they're not looking at the digestion. And you
Yeah,
can eat all the expensive food in the world, and if you don't digest it, you don't get the actual minerals
right.
or whatever. But yeah, detox is huge. And this is the area where I haven't yet seen somebody that doesn't have something going on. It's
Oh
just a
yeah.
very toxic world we live in. And quite often, clients that have cancer have been exposed to things, multiple things, and often don't have good detox genetics. So we've got that kind of perfect storm going on. And there's a lot of things you can do for detox, but the sexy stuff is not what I think is most important. The most important is getting yourself out of the toxin exposure. People just
Saunas.
gloss over that and they're like, "Oh, I'm doing this shake." And I'm like, "No, that I'm doing a juice cleanse." I'm like, "No, it doesn't cleanse anything if you're
Mm.
still being exposed to it." So, make sure
Well, I
you do
mean,
that.
I
And
s-
then I tell my clients you have to get the stuff that inflow to stop before you're allowed to start working on the outflow. And then with that, you've got to, make sure you have the binders so things don't swirl around and land in other places like your brain that actually get out. And you have to make sure your elimination pathways are open.
mhm.
So, pooping once a day at least. But like you said, the coffee enemas, I am a huge fan. And it's not for constipation, it's for supporting and stimulating the liver. It makes more glutathione, release the
Mhm.
bile, get the
Mhm.
toxins out.
Take the toxic load off.
But the thing that I love them most for is kind of goes back to what you're saying about stress. Most cancer clients tend to get, I shouldn't say most, a lot of them tend to get stuck in the sympathetic, the autonomic nervous system, where they're that fight or flight. I
Mhm.
was totally there.
The fear and the anxiety and
But even before they have cancer, they're usually the go, 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 can't stop
wound
person.
up all the time.
Yeah. And what happens is the vagal nerve stimulation is actually some of the best is doing the coffee enemas. So it's not what's talked about the most. People talk about humming and gargling. That's not nearly as effective as stimulating the vagal nerve with
No.
the coffee enemas.
Yeah, and saunas are really good too. I see where you
Yes.
you believe in that, and I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best things anybody can have is go invest in a sauna, even if it's a portable sauna,
I would
and
agree. Yeah.
whether it's far infrared, near infrared. Some people like one over the other, but I it's just sweating, and and detoxifying and get these
Yeah.
metals out. And there's a lot of things you can take to eliminate the metals, and there's a lot of things that, I mean, I do at home myself on a regular basis because, I mean, like you said, nobody's going to be clean of everything. If they have cancer, they're just like a garbage waste dump, and I've seen that under blood works, looking at my under my microscope, and you
Hmm.
see that. I mean, the blood doesn't lie. You see all kinds of junk,
Right.
and you clean that up, the body has a chance to heal now.
It does. And the infrared saunas are dramatically one of the best tools.
Hmm.
And again, this goes back to getting all those elimination pathways open. People don't usually have a problem breathing, getting the carbon dioxide out, peeing. Sometimes they're constipated. That's easy to remedy. But the sweating, a lot of times, cancer clients have a hard time sweating.
Yes.
And it's not just sweating, it's sweating in a parasympathetic state. They've done research that there's more toxins coming out of the skin if they're in a calm state than if they're exercising it in a sympathetic state. So, I mean, those are a really big one, regardless of whatever toxins you're dealing with. I would totally agree with you on that.
Cancer is. I'm just putting my 2 cents in here, but cancer is pretty much a full-time job when you have to at the beginning anyway. It takes a
Yeah,
lot, and you can't, sometimes you got to take some time off and take care of yourself. I mean, it's important. And, preparing good food, exercising in moderation at least every day, moving, sweating, uh, coffee enemas. I mean, each one doesn't take forever, but, it's something you have to get in the habit of doing. And, getting in, uh, just like even, I mean, I like myself, I like uh, colonics, colon hydrotherapy.
hmm,
I mean, just kind of, I like both things. I think it's important. But
they're
a lot of
different.
times after we go through cancer and we do very well and all that we learn about all these things and we do these things, and then we kind of slack up a little because we get busy working again and you don't have the time. But we know it's there and we do it, but not like at the beginning. You really have to do it a lot, and
Yeah,
because you got to get those numbers down so that the body can heal, like I said earlier. And I interview these doctors that say once you get the toxic load off and you get the person on a good diet, get the sugar down, get everything down, and detoxify, and you know you know uh, most of the time people get better. And the
yeah.
emotions is a big thing, but they're going to start to believe and feel positive once you start to feel physically better.
Yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, it's a constant thing. I did a coffee enema this morning.
Hmm.
The emotion stuff, I think, is the area people skip over.
They do.
Um, it, it, there's a lot of trauma and it needs very strategic work and it needs to be done in a way that's not going to just pull more junk out because if clients are depressed, if they're anxious while they're cancering, which is very, very common, I'd say the majority of my clients have some degree of anxiety. Like, are they going to then have success with these huge protocols? Are
Hmm.
they going to actually be able to cook if they're depressed? Like, no, they're going to want their comfort food. They're going to lay on the couch. And so, like, working on those almost first, or at least right at the beginning, is super important, to make sure that the implementation is there, fully. It's a big deal.
That's a hard thing, and there's several things people can do. A lot of things they can do. They just got to find something, I think, that fits them and gives them
Absolutely.
that, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, whether it's walking in the woods every day, I mean, just to start to understand, why this happened to them and what they're doing and learning to love themselves
Yeah.
and really take their life back, their health back, and
Hmm.
understand. And sometimes it's hard when you don't have the support at home too,
Very
and
much. Yeah.
that's a
And
hard one.
there's some really cool techniques out there that people can do to, like, reprogram the brain and such after traumas that are very, very helpful because it doesn't pull up all this garbage toxicity and leave it there without being dealt with. Counseling can be helpful, but a lot of times it's not moving fast enough
Hmm.
to really make a difference quick enough, because sometimes it can be a 2 or 3 year process. But I just see a lot of clients that are in very, very deep trauma, things that happen to them that are
Yeah.
terrible, that it's literally manifested in their body, and it's
It's
a
just,
big deal.
they just live in the past and the traumas of the past. And
Not necessarily. It's just it's really taken a toll on their physicality, and they can't, they're like stuck. They're not able to move past it and like make new changes. I mean, a lot of women are stuck in emotionally abusive relationships. They literally can't get out. So it's not past, it's the current, you know.
you got to really, really focus on that, don't you? Really, a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And while you do the other things, so important.
Right. Because like you said, it's a full-time job. I mean, I
If you
remember
just
having,
focus on the emotions, I don't think it's enough, but it's a
no,
big part. I think half of healing is believing in what you're doing. And
yes.
that's just positive, because when you have that negative, it just holds your immune system down. It just can't, I think it's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, myself, I didn't really feel like the healing started until I got out and started to see positive things happening.
I
And
think that's
like,
enormous. I think you're right
yeah,
on with that. I mean, it's hard to shift yourself into that sometimes, but you have to want it.
yeah.
Um, I know for me, there was a turning point where I was like, I'm going to decide, am I going to do something about this, or am I just going to allow it to take me? And that clarity of one direction versus the other and having to choose versus I see clients that it's assumed and they're just shuffled along and it's not their choice and they are almost wanting to die, and it's like they need to engage in it and really own their life and
Mm.
choose the positive, like you're saying. Choose life. And I think that's enormous, because it sounds so like, well, of course they want to live. Not everyone does. And even if you do, if you're choosing the negative thought process, are you really choosing that?
Yeah, sometimes people really, maybe they don't want to live. I don't know, deep inside, but the last thing we need is someone that's negative, coming out and telling us, "Oh, you better do this," and if
Yes.
you don't do this, this is going to happen, or you only have, you know, 2 or 3 years or whatever to live, and
Yeah.
they start to believe that, and that's the end of them.
That is the biggest thing, and probably one of the most important things I did. Somebody recommended this to me, and I tell all my clients to do this. It was such a blessing. I'm pretty open. I'm an extrovert, and I had been sharing what was going on with my journey. And at one point, I got to where pretty early on, I sent an email to everybody I knew. It was literally my like entire email database. I was telling them, this is what's happened. This is what I'm doing. This is what I've chosen. I really would like your prayers. And then I said, I get that some of you may think I'm making the wrong choice and I'm not doing what you would do. And I respect that. I would ask that you respect me and do not mention that to me. I don't
Mm.
want any negativity in my circle. And there were people, family members even, that still to this day don't talk to me. I am okay with that. But I did not get bombarded with the "you're gonna die" stuff. And I think that
No.
was such a fabulous thing to have, this like positive bubble of only people that wanted to support me around me. It was so huge.
Yeah, you need that, like-minded people around you, not negativity. And so many of these like
Yeah.
support groups you go to, it's all about, this and this and this, and people are like, I don't know, it scares me a little bit. So,
I've seen several clients where they've got a mom or a husband or what have you that doesn't agree with what they're doing. And it just is constantly putting all this fear and doubt in their mind. And it's so awkward because it's like you need to get that person to shut up or something, because it's not helping you. And it's so difficult and awkward to say. But I think that's a huge one.
yeah, it's just everybody gets to the healing space within, different ways, but the things we've been talking about, the things you're talking about that helped you is so important. All these things, I
Mhm.
think it's the key. you know this, you've been successful. I've talked to a lot of people that've been successful. It's a very similar sounding story, of the things. And I mean, you're, I think, more educated about a lot of the things that people need to test for now with the practice that you have and the people you're working with and can people work with you? You work with people one on one?
Yeah, I actually have a group program.
Mm-hmm.
Any women in the US. We go through all the labs and I really equip and educate them with understanding what their labs say and what to do about them and specific protocols and everything with that. So it's a year program, but we're going through all of these areas because they're all really important. And I love getting to empower women to, take control of their health so they don't have to live in that fear place.
Yeah. And it's important to really be be guided by someone that's been through it. I think it's important.
It was
And
very helpful for me, I have to say.
experience, to be around people that walk their talk, but have got the experience. They've been through it. They know what's important. I mean, a lot of the doctors know because they've worked with so many people, and I mean, some of them maybe have had cancer too. I don't know, but they've got the experience. They
Mhm.
really can lay it out there for each individual and figure out what they need to do for their own individual needs.
Yeah.
And how can someone get a hold of you, Katrina?
Yeah. So my website is cancerfreedom.com. And there's a application to work with us or a contact page right on there. I'm also on Instagram. It's at Katrina Foe, just my name.
So would they be working with you, or do you have a staff of other nutritionists? Or
With the group program, it's directly with me.
oh,
Hmm.
that's great.
Yeah.
Do you have like any group, like over Zoom or anything that support?
Mhm. Yeah,
For
we actually just had our group Q&A this morning. 2-hour Q&A, ask Katrina anything. We do that every
Oh,
week.
that's great.
Hmm.
So the people can from all over, I guess, all over the country or whatever,
Yep. Yep.
can work
My
with
clients
you,
are
and
all over.
they don't have to come see you directly.
Yeah.
They can just you can set up the testing for them and get
Yeah.
them on the right track.
Yeah, it's it blows my mind every day, like how much we can do with technology. And I love to be able to stack the tech to a helpful way, so that we can get our questions answered and utilize it to leverage ourselves so that, we don't have to travel. We can do the labs, right? Most of them in, comfort of our own home.
Sure.
Not the blood, that would be weird. You go somewhere to get that drawn, but as much as I would like to give my clients a hug, it makes it so much more convenient to really get those answers you're looking for and not have to travel and live somewhere else and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, maybe some of them will want to come see you personally and see our beautiful part of the
Right?
country.
I know. I tell my kids all the time, like, we live in the most beautiful place in the world. And they're like, we know, Mom.
Yeah, we start talking, everybody be moving up here. All right, they already are. So, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I love what you're doing, and I love the inspiration that you give people and the hope. It's the hope, and you've got a story, and you've gone through emotional issues. You've gone through it all, and look at you. I mean, you look great. You're healthy, and you feel
Thanks.
good, and
Yes, very much.
you haven't had any more issues, and you're on the right track. That's great, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know it's
It's exciting. There's so many great tests and things out there now that are non-toxic, no, contrast dyes, no radiation, super non-invasive. So I've been enjoying having access to those to monitor things and yeah, things have been going well.
good. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say before we let you go? Because I think we've been on almost an hour, so
I think we have. No, I very much enjoyed it. It was a
yeah,
delight to talk to you. And now that I know you're so close, we'll have to
yeah. Yeah, no, I love to hear what you're doing, and I love it, because I mean, myself and others need to be doing this. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not perfect, but I try to take care of myself most of the time, 99.9% of the time, let's say. So,
That's the beautiful thing about remission and really
yeah,
knowing yourself is we can kind of, you know, flex a little more. We don't have, 7 out of 8 things working against us.
yeah,
Um, and but yet knowing your weak links, like I know my weak links, I know what to keep my eye on going forward for the future. So
yeah.
very
Well, good
empowered
for
place.
you. Good for you. And I just I hope that people will get in touch with you
Thank you.
and learn from your experience. But anyway, everyone, thanks for watching today, and it's been a joy talking to Katrina, and you know check her out, everything she's doing, and I'm sure she'd love to spend a little time with you, if you need help. And uh, but also be sure to check out all of our other interviews, and I think you are going to find that this interview is similar to a lot of the interviews in the ways that people are taking control of their own health, and using some of the testing that's available now to
Mhm.
be able to really know what's working. And when it's not working, you'll be able to see that. So, but anyway, check it all out, and check out our restaurant guide again, templetonlist.com. And this is James Templeton. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you next time.